Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mellissa Thomas with Florida National News coming to you with the FNN Politics and Power series for your Thursday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And today we're doing a one-on-one with Orange County property appraiser Rick Singh. So I'm going to give you a brief bio. I mean, obviously, this is a man who needs no introduction. He's been in the community, he's highly visible, and has pretty much kind of changed the way that the Orange County Property Appraiser's Office is seen in terms of visibility and branding. But just to give you a little bit more about him, just to let you guys know. So this is a gentleman who he is the first state certified property appraiser and ever elected to that office. He was first voted into office in 2012 and subsequently reelected in 2016. So he's a proud veteran, of course. He served in the United States Army. So shout out to my fellow veteran. I served in the United States Navy. He also is big on education. So he actually received an executive development program certificate from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Executive Education. He is a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School's executive education program as well. And he recently completed studies on artificial intelligence from MIT's Sloan Executive Education program. Also like me, a fellow Caribbean American. He and his family hail from Guyana. My family and I, we hail from Jamaica. But he came up to the United States many years ago and actually lived in New York. He actually lived in the Bronx area. My family and I, we were in the Brooklyn area. So we have a lot in common. However, we're gonna let Mr. Singh get into even more of the details as we do our interview today. So without further ado, I want to bring in Mr. Rick Singh. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So first, we definitely want to get to your health because we know you recently tested positive for COVID-19. So I mean, how are you holding up now? And how's your family?
More recently, I was tested negative twice, consecutive negative testing. So I went through the COVID phase, if you will. It's not nothing to talk about. It's horrible. So I didn't have it as bad as my wife. My wife was also contracted the virus, and she was hospitalized. So that was wow. Pretty scary. But nevertheless, she persevered and was released, and she's about 5 days behind me. So we're anticipating that she's probably going to start taking her tests to test out of COVID in the next few days. So thankfully, it was an experience, but I still tell people to be very, very careful. This thing is no joke. It is a serious pandemic, if you will, and we must all practice the 3 W's, of course: wearing a mask, washing hands, and watching your distance.
Very, very well spoken on that one. And, during our evening news rundowns with all of our COVID-19 updates, we always make sure to reiterate that as well. Like, guys, just continue to be careful. Yeah. And very quickly, kind of give us your thoughts on, the way Florida reopened and, your thoughts on the recent surge of newer cases that we're seeing. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so my office is a microcosm, and I often compare policies. I often compare reopening of the county or the state with how my office would operate. And my concerns were safety of my employees and safety of the visitors to the office. And I wanted to ensure total safety before I put anybody else in that environment. And I think that is the thinking that we should all use. We should all use that in terms of the general population also. So they are definitely it should be science-based, should not be politically driven. As you see, I think a lot of these decisions is either a business decision based on science or a political decision based on whatever political motivations they are. I think they should be strongly driven with science and strongly driven with reality and a good business sense to reopen. So that's my take on it.
Gotcha. And in terms of the actual day-to-day work that you do, not necessarily including the visitors to your office, but How has the pandemic and the economic fallout from it affected your day-to-day work in terms of what you
So
do in the
the
office?
economic, yeah, thank you for that question. The economic fallout we're not going to feel right now from the property appraiser's office because quite simply we assess 1 year in arrears.
Mhm.
The day-to-day operation of the office, I'm very proud of the way we were able to maneuver things and make adjustments at the office to ensure that we to ensure.
Ooh, all right. Well, if necessary, we'll cut to a commercial break. I did hear a familiar chime in there, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. We will be back with Mr. Singh once things reload a little bit. So stay tuned, okay? Stay tuned.
I'm not picking it up. You pick it up.
I'm not picking it up.
Well, somebody's got to pick it up.
I'll pick it up. They're clean. 'Cause my hand is clean. Oh yeah, I'm Charmin clean. That's how I know they're clean.
Charmin Ultra Strong is woven like a washcloth and just cleans better.
Yeah, I'm Charmin
The
clean.
kid does have a
That's
point.
My hand is clean. Yeah.
Enjoy the go with Charmin. And for an extra clean finish, try Charmin flushable wipes.
Mercury
Hey,
agents everywhere are saving people hundreds and are also there to help save the day.
That was fast. You covered.
Thanks, agents.
Watch out!
That's my car.
Don't worry. We're here to help.
For savings and service above the rest, you can count on Mercury. We're on a mission to save you money.
all right, guys,
Right.
we are back. We are back. Thanks for coming back, Mr. Singh. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the question you had was basically, transitioning in a COVID environment. So we closed the downtown office, the lobby to visitors around March 16th. We increased our capabilities in terms of being able to interact with our public. And one of the things we did was essentially develop some artificial intelligence tool, utilize some machine learning with chatbots, and we're able to communicate with our tax customers at the office. We then concurrently had our field appraisers come back in because at that point in time, the public was very uneasy with strangers walking around. Especially government workers. So we pulled everybody back into the office. On March 16th, we deployed most of our staff to be remotely. So we're one of the first government agencies in the county, if not the state, to go 100% remote. So we did that around March 23rd. So we're very proud of that as far as going remote. Our productivity has been, the same. Since then, we have put our field appraisers back out in the field, but they're not contacting. They're keeping social distance and not interacting directly with taxpayers.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you for that. And hopefully our audience was able to follow all of that. That was a very detailed, process. So thank you for sharing that. And then, of course, we technically had the commercial break already, so we can get into more of the candidate side of things. So, I know one of the key tagline, for your campaign is experience matters. Talk about why that's important to you, especially given the political process here in the United States. Neophytes can run, and we've seen, some can win, even if they're brand new to the office that they're running for. So talk about why experience is important to you.
For this particular office, Mellissa, experience is tremendously important. And the taxpayers spoke loudly on this subject in 2012. I ran on the platform of Experience Matter in 2012, and the incumbent back then was an unexperienced non-appraiser. Thomas Jefferson said many centuries ago, I should say, when this nation was being found, he said, "Lend me your talents and skills as we forge ahead to build this nation." What he was talking about back then is very relevant now. He was talking about people with private sector experience, coming to the public forefront, coming to the public sector, and serve the public with their private sector experience. I am an appraiser, Mellissa. I've been an appraiser for over 25 years. I actually worked at an entry-level position at the Office of the Property Appraiser, making minimum wage. I went to night school and got state certified as an appraiser, and then branched out in the private sector and started an appraisal company, one of the largest appraisal company serving 5 counties here in Central Florida. Subsequently, I also started a real estate office. I was a Century 21 broker, started the Century 21 office. So I had a slew of real estate sales agents. So I operated a appraisal company and a real estate office, and also a title company. So I was tremendously dipped in the real estate environment, more so coming to the office with public and private sector appraisal experience. I'm also a veteran, as you said. I'm a father. I bring a lot of life experience to this office. But someone wanting to be the property appraiser of Orange County and not having experience in the appraisal practice, I would equate that to unconscious incompetence, Mellissa. They don't know that they don't know. And that's a terrible place to be, because the tax roll of Orange County is the most complex tax roll in the world. Think about this for a moment. No other jurisdiction in the entire world has 6 major theme parks, 84,000 hotel rooms, over 147,000 apartment units, timeshare. We are ground zero for timeshare. All of this happens in Orange County. The tax roll when I took office was $110 billion. Today it's $220 billion. And that's from being fair, equitable, and ensuring that we do the right thing with regards to having the experience to do the job that's necessary to serve the taxpayers. So experience is tremendously important in this position. Ask yourself this question. As you know, I have 2 opponents running against me. And ask yourself this question. If your mother had worked all her life scrubbing floors and she'd accumulated some money and she wanted to invest this money, of the 3 people on this ticket, who would you ask to do the appraisal of that home? My opponents combined have not appraised a single home. I have the distinction of telling you that I have appraised $1 trillion. Let me repeat that, $1 trillion. There are very few people walking the globe today that can make that statement that they've appraised $1 trillion. I've implemented programs since taking office to return $1 billion to the taxpayers of Orange County. This money can go to pay for schools, education, build more affordable housing. So it's very, very important. My office is ranked #1 in the state for accuracy of assessment, #1 in the state for defense of assessment, and #1 in the state for efficiencies. This is by the Department of Revenue when compared to our peers. We have defended 99.9% of the values at the Value Adjustment Board. For those of our viewers that don't know what the Value Adjustment Board is, it is a quasi-judicial system that's utilized to give taxpayers a sense of fairness. It's an independent board that's set aside with a specific magistrate that is an appraiser that listens to both sides. They have listened to both sides and have sided with us 99.9% of the times, ensuring that we are fair, equitable, and accurate. So again, not having experience and wanting to be the property appraiser is a pipe dream, and it doesn't benefit the taxpayers at all.
So in effect, you're saying in order to fill the role, the person would have to already be a property appraiser in order to effectively fill the role.
This is a supposition that have been tested, and I am Exhibit A because I came into this office in 2012 and ascended to this office and inheriting a mess, for want of better words, because the tax roll of Orange County at that time was in disarray. And again, it was unconscious incompetence, not to knock my predecessor. He's a fine man and he did the best job he could, but he didn't know what he didn't know. And that's a dangerous place to be when you're handling a tax roll with 40 million data points.
That's a lot. That's a lot. So thank you for that clarification. Wanted our viewers to know that for the record. Appreciate that. And of course, I would be remiss not to ask this question. So obviously, there's an investigation going on into the conduct, into your office. So the question is weighing both of those, because voters are conscious of, not only your level of experience, but also that investigation, like, why should folks choose to reelect you with that in mind? Obviously, the experience is there, but given the investigation as well, what do you want folks to focus on in terms of their choice to reelect you? And for those who may have lost their trust, how would you propose to restore that?
Well, firstly, Mellissa, let me, if I may, correct you. There is no investigation into my conduct as I am aware of. So there's the allegations of the investigation of which you're speaking of has not been made public, has not been made to me. Yes, there is an investigation, but let's go back to the accusations, baseless accusations that was made by 2 employees trying to really extort money from the taxpayers. I got this letter from 2 employees that essentially made demands. They were baseless. I did the thing that any executive in his right mind would do, call in my legal counsel. I called in our legal counsel, and he referred it to the finest jurisprudence of the time and of this time, someone that's a legend in our community, and that is Justice Belvin Perry, the former Chief Justice. He did a meticulous and independent investigation into the matter. He called these 2 young ladies that made the baseless allegations and asked them to go under oath. They refused to go under oath, Mellissa, but they named, Tom, Dick, and Harry can substantiate our story. The Chief Justice called Tom, Dick, and Harry and asked them, and they basically refuted everything that all of these allegations. First, they said that the allegations were baseless. Second, they said there's no truth to this matter. And third, they said they were the ones that was creating a hostile work environment in the office of the property appraiser. These 2 individuals have essentially taken these allegations to all type of law enforcement agencies around the state and essentially have made these accusations again. And again, it is incumbent upon the law enforcement agencies to do their due diligence and investigate any questions that have been asked, and there have been very minimal questions asked of our office. We have provided and cooperated and plan to cooperate with any investigation. But again, I go back by saying these allegations are baseless and has nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the Office of the Property Appraiser. And I think these allegations were orchestrated to create and be an impediment in this election because, again, the entities that's involved, a good example of that, the 2 ladies that's making these allegations happen to work today as we speak for one of my opponents, one of my political opponents, right? So there you go.
Interesting. And I did want to kind of follow up on, one other detail. There were, reports of one who did settle with your office. So just for our audience, kind of reframe for them that trust through line. Like, okay, this happened. Absolutely. This was leveled, against you, but all right, let's see why we should bubble Rick Singh's name back in when we go to the ballot box.
Because you're talking about almost 7 years of experience. You're talking about 3 individuals that came forward. The individual I settled with, his complaint was against one of these defendants in the other cases. The judge actually threw out in the federal case all the allegations that's made against the office and against me, but kept the one in that was essentially based on the other employee that was creating havoc in the office. So again, we settled. We thought it was the prudent thing to do in this matter, the right thing to do in the interest of expenses, and we settled that individual. Had we gone to court, I think we would have won that case.
All right. Thank you for sharing your side of the story. We appreciate that. We're going to get into some more conversation, guys, but stay tuned. We're going to take one more quick commercial break. We will be right back. Stay tuned.
At Duke Energy, we deliver electricity and so much more, like free home energy assessments, rebates for energy-saving improvements, payment options to help you better manage your budget, and even bill credits for helping the community use less energy. So no matter what you're doing, we can help you make better energy choices every day. It's just another way we bring power to your life. How much can you save?
Right. And we are back. Mr. Rick Singh is a busy man, y'all. But yeah, thank you again for being with us today, Mr. Singh. Wanted to get the procedural picture for our audience, for those who have no idea what the day-to-day operations are at your office. Obviously, restoring money to the tax roll involves investigating filings from various corporations that have real estate, across Orange County. But when a larger corporation decides to fight back, decides to perhaps come for your office for any particular reason, what is normally the recourse of that to hold them accountable, just from a procedural standpoint? What does that look like?
Sure. So let's talk about the values that we are talking about. When I took office in 2012, the tax roll was $110 billion. Today, it's $220 billion. This year alone, we have the large taxpayers, theme parks, hotels, that essentially challenge the value. They don't want to pay that much tax because the property appraiser is saying so. So they went to the Value Adjustment Board, which is a quasi-judicial system, and really appealed their matters with the Value Adjustment Board. It is important for the property appraiser to have the skill, care, and diligence, and more so the experience to defend that assessment. Okay, it is not enough to be accurate. You have to defend that accuracy. And Mellissa, we have defended our values at the Value Adjustment Board against these big corporations at a tune of 99.9% accuracy against the Value Adjustment Board. We're talking a lot of money. We're talking about $40 billion in some years. So again, a lot of money is being challenged by these large corporations, and you have to have someone that's advocating for the taxpayers. I am that one that has advocated for the taxpayers for the last 7 to 8 years in this office. And again, it requires appraisal experience. It requires skill, care, and diligence. And I've demonstrated that year in and year out.
So once the money is restored to, Orange County's tax rolls, what normally happens from there?
So from there, they're issued a tax bill and they pay their taxes. That money goes to the general fund. It funds teachers, it funds potholes, it funds everything that's necessary for Orange County.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Like a lot of our interviews, the purpose of them is to help our viewers have a better understanding too, in terms of how things run, which kind of gives that significance to the importance of voting locally, because that's the national message.
Let me oversimplify it. Think of it as a three-legged stool. The property appraiser was responsible for generating the funds with his assessment. The county is responsible for applying a millage rate to that value, and then it's a factor, and then that determines their funds for the budget. The tax collector is the third leg of that stool. He collects that money and sends it to the county. So that's essentially how the system works.
Beautiful illustration.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That definitely helps our listeners to explain a few things. So I wanted to ask you, given that this is your second term that's wrapping up, if reelected, would your priorities shift a little bit? Are they the same as previously, or is there anything that you would do differently this time in terms of priorities and goals?
So it's not so much priority and goals. It's perhaps shifting focus. We will still continue to be the #1 office in the state of Florida for accuracy of assessments, defensive assessments, and efficiency. We will continue to be in the top 1% of property appraisers' office in the entire world. We will continue to be a world leader in technology and GIS technology and in our website. We will continue to be the gold standard for websites and technology and appraisal practice. In some areas, I mentor some smaller islands and property appraisers in different areas because we have the resources. We've got over 1,000 years of appraisal experience at the Property Appraiser's Office today. These are men and women that have done a tremendous job in terms of putting us as really the beacon in the appraisal practice. So in my first term, as you indicated in my introduction, I really focus on executive decisions and went to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and trained with the best and the brightest in the world. And there I came back to the Property Appraiser's Office in my first year and inculcated that training and put it and implemented it into practice. The second year I focused on economics and I essentially went to Wharton School of Business and came back with that executive training and inculcated economic, processes and policies, and really we're able to give back $1.4 million from our $18 million budget to Orange County because of refining our practices and finding smarter ways to do things and leveraging technology. The third term, I want to focus on two areas, and it's in the technology form. It's artificial intelligence and it's machine learning. And as you alluded to in my introduction, quite recently I attended MIT and took a class on that very subject. So I want to focus on doing things more streamlined, leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've even started that during the pandemic because we were able to create a bot on our website that can talk to taxpayers. So you get on our website, on the right-hand corner, there is a bot that's called Ask Rick. And you type a question in there and a machine is responding to you because it's a frequently asked questions. And if you want to escalate it to a live person, then you can do that. This is something we designed at the Property Appraiser's office to talk to our taxpayers during the pandemic environment. So I want to build more tools like that, more tools where we are engaging taxpayers and serving taxpayers better.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And that bot is real, guys. If you've never been on the website, like they had it down to your orange tie. I was like, wow, they really matched it up. But thank you for sharing that. And I noticed there was, I want to say last year at the end of the State of Orange County Real Estate, you had included in the presentation the use of drones as well, even for the field appraisal process.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that, like incorporating the technology even out in the field.
Yeah, so we're one of the first property appraisers office in the world to implement drone technology. Drones today are used for all types of industries. Drones, studying technology, drone has something that's called a doubling effect, which is Moore's law, that essentially says this technology will double in capacity. So in the case of a drone, it'll carry twice as much payload. It will be twice as much faster. It would be more efficient, twice as much efficient. Drone has a doubling effect following Moore's law of 9 months. So drone is an amazing technology, and we've embraced drones at the Property Appraiser's office. We're using drones at hard to access property, agricultural properties, properties that we traditionally wouldn't have access to. We would use drones. We've also implemented drones in our disaster relief program. At the Property Appraiser office, we are responsible for retrieving data, retrieving damages after a catastrophe like a storm or a hurricane. So we utilize drones for this purpose. This is part of our best practice and training right now.
Okay, so you guys are pretty much going to have to use that again, given the fact that we're finally back in hurricane season, like even with the pandemic.
Hopefully not, but we're ready.
Right. Got you. And so to your point about the courses and training that you took to reframe your thinking and how to approach the office, you've taken an office that folks, may not have paid attention to. It might have been obscure because, of course, it's something a little more administrative, and you've transformed it. Like you've made it something that is, aesthetically appealing. You have your presentations and the rooms are packed at all of them, whether it's the State of Orange County Real Estate or even the State of Lake Nona, when you recently started launching that.
Yes.
Talk about what was your approach in transforming that office to be something that is a little more user-friendly, for lack of a better term, something that's a little easier to understand for one, and something that's a little more appealing to the general public and to businesses, of course.
Let me break that up into two parts. The first part is serving people, and the second part is transparency. When I decided to run for office, one of the best advice I got was from a member of Congress, and she told me, make sure when you run for office, your motivation is to help people. And that has been emblazoned in my brain in terms of service to the community. Why we try to do these events to let people know about this office is so very important. I have a saying. It's basically to serve a community, you must know a community, and to know a community is to serve that community. And we have implemented, as you have indicated, a tremendous amount of programs. One program is, of course, engaging our community and letting them know. Satellite offices is something that we've set up throughout the county. And this is letting taxpayers know of the services we provide. It's shame on us, shame on me as an elected official if a citizen, a senior in my community, have to make a decision about paying taxes or paying taxes or buying medication, because she should not have to make that decision if there is relief. There are all types of exemptions that we try to bring to the forefront of our seniors. There is a senior exemption. There is a fallen hero, widow and widowers exemption, all type of disability exemptions that's available to our taxpayers. And we want to make sure that our taxpayers know about all these exemptions. I want to be the guy that if they have an issue with the property appraiser or the property appraisal's office, they call me. I'm accountable to them. In the area of transparency, property appraiser's office are the largest collector of data in local government. That is a fact. We collect data, tremendous amount of data. And when I took office, I made it a mantra, if you will, to ensure that this data is available to our taxpayers. This data is put in formats that they can understand it, and we can compile this data and collaborate this data with other agencies. And that's why we started an event like the State of Orange County Real Estate. This is an event that you've come to, Mellissa. We get nothing less than 1,000 people coming to this event. They're well put together, a captive audience, and we bring stakeholders in the real estate environment, in the appraisal environment, in our community to really talk about what's happening, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And these are events that, events that we do throughout the county. So making this office more appealing and more accessible to the taxpayers is something that I'm very proud of. And my staff embrace this ideology of being accessible to the taxpayers.
Right. And I was actually going to, just in transitioning a little bit or kind of adding a layer to it, you're also very visible, like just tangibly out in the community. You participate in a lot of community events, networking events, and also parades. Like you're in all of them. But talk about the significance of being visible as someone who is an elected official, someone who's a constitutional officer that, Orange County residents may or may not know too much about the office, but being physically present and being able to introduce yourself, talking to them, how that has helped you guys in the office.
So that's helped us in the office in many ways. A taxpayer should not have to go to Google or a directory to find out who their property appraiser is, or any of their elected officials. So that's one of the reasons why we are so accessible to our taxpayers. Our ulterior motive is to be there and be on top of their mind that if they have an appraisal issue, it comes to us and they know to call us and they have a number and they can interact with us and we can solve their problem. We're serving people, and that's our motivation. So that's really the motivation for going out to these events and making ourselves known. If they have a question, I'm accountable to them for any question they have in this office, and to solve that problem and to help them. That's the motivation behind it.
Gotcha. And on a business front, kind of talk about your thoughts on Orange County receiving funding from the Federal CARES Act and the grant that was made available to particularly the small businesses, because I know on your end you primarily deal with businesses as well. So talk about your thoughts on that and kind of the rollout that you saw.
Businesses are hurting, Mellissa. In the hotel industry, these big hotels, had 60% occupancy. Today they have 7% occupancy. 124 employees. Today they have 6 employees. So businesses are hurting. So it was wise for elected officials to issue some type of support, some type of comfort to these business from an economic standpoint. So I'm very proud of the elected officials that made the decision to disseminate those funds to our businesses. I don't know if it's enough. I think we may have to go another round, and because this pandemic, it looks like it's taking an uptake. in our community. So I think there's a lot of hard and fast decisions that's going to have to be made.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. All right, guys, we're going to take another quick commercial break. We will be back, and we're going to talk to Mr. Singh more on the human side. You guys know I like to do that, obviously cover the priorities and everything of the elected official or the candidate, but we're going to talk a little bit more about him as a husband and a dad. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All this time we fought side by side. We trained together. We lost together. And now, you're the only one standing in my way.
All right, guys, welcome back. Thanks for continuing to tune in with us. So, Mr. Singh, I wanted to ask you just on the more difficult days, and I ask every person that comes on our Politics and Power series, but on the more difficult days, what keeps you going? What helps you to stay consistent, to continue to persevere and keep you focused?
Mellissa, I'm a workaholic. I grew up watching my mother work 3 jobs as a maid. So she instilled this work ethic in me. It's something that it's something that's in my DNA. So I when people ask me what I do for fun, I tell them work, and they laugh, but I'm serious.
Wow.
So I work. I have long hours. I probably get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I probably put my head on the pillow 11, 12 o'clock if I'm lucky. The time between there is working. So work is my fallback. I love to travel. Mm-hmm. I've been to some amazing countries, see some amazing nationalities and ethnicity. So I love to travel. I love to travel with my wife and my kids. I try to take them along whenever. Love family vacations. So those are some of the things that I do to escape.
Gotcha. And then what do you feel is, especially now that you're wrapping up your second term, what do you feel is the best or most gratifying part of being OCPA?
The work that we've done, on the world stage, we are recognized with the Ian McClung Award. That is an award that's issued to one person in the entire world in the appraisal industry. I'm so fortunate to tell you that I was the recipient of that. And the next year, I trained one of my staff to compete for that, and he was also the recipient of that. That's 2 people in Orange County, Florida, beating out places like Dubai and Shanghai and all parts of the world to receive the Ian McClung Award, of which I'm a recipient. Our office has been bestowed with many honors, the Gold Stevie Award quite recently, the 2020 rounds, by the American Business Award, where this agency recognized the Office of the Property Appraiser for developing impactful initiatives, implementing multifaceted approach to servicing of the taxpayers. We also received the Silver Award, the 2020 Silver Stevie Award for customer engagement. This is something you and I talk about all the time, and they looked at, these are independent judges from around the world talking about the 99.8% customer satisfaction to visitors of the property appraiser's office. These are the judges talking about 39-second average hold time or a 2-minute wait time in the lobby of the property appraiser's office. We've also received a Bronze Stevie Award for signature event, the State of Orange County Real Estate, and disseminating information to over 1,000 guests. We have won the Digital Service Award for our website. So this office has done some tremendous things on the world stage, and I'm very proud of the staff. Firstly, my staff, because I could not do this alone. I've got some amazing, talented people at the OCPA family. Very, very proud of them for the work that they do day in and day out. But I'm very proud also to bring this back to the taxpayers of Orange County.
And piggybacking off of some of what you shared there, you mentioned, other property appraisers across the globe and other nations like Dubai that have a lot of development going on. But what are some lessons that you've been able to take away from what, in terms of what you've learned from other property appraisers, like whether here in the United States or even globally? What are some key things that you were able to take away and possibly use in Orange County?
Yeah, I've been a keynote speaker in Spain. I've been a keynote speaker in Prague, Australia, different parts of the world at different real estate, different appraisal environments. And the takeaway from those are basically the relationships you develop. The takeaway for those are the best practices. I went to one development in Andorra. And this was actually a development where they were building a home in the side of a mountain. They carved out a mountain and actually built a home. Well, how does that translate to Orange County? If that type of construction ever comes to Orange County, I am knowledgeable about it. I can basically go back and say, yeah, I saw that in Andorra. It may not be the same exact thing, but I saw the methodology. I saw the best practice to value that. So I can speak to that and speak to that intelligently. I can call the property appraiser that's responsible for that jurisdiction and have a dialogue with him. So it's really the relationships you bring back. The presentations are always valuable, and that's bringing back best practices to Orange County, whether it's GIS technology, whether it's mapping, whether it's technology like drone. So whatever it is, we bring it back to Orange County, and we don't just go to sleep on it. We essentially inculcate it and utilize it for the benefit of the office and the taxpayers.
All right. And then to the point of being a father, first of all, happy Father's Day. We just had Father's Day recently. But I did want to ask about, the fact that you're so far 2-term incumbent and now your daughter is running for a judge. So I wanted to find out, has she ever hit you up for advice? And if so, what kind of advice did you give her as someone who's running for public office?
Yeah, so she grew up in a front row, if you will. She had a front row seat in watching my ascent to public office and the trials and tribulations and the hard work and dedication. And she decided at a very young age that she wanted to be a judge. She's very, very experienced. Although she's young, she's very experienced in the real estate industry because and the appraisal practice and in business. She ran her own practice. She also worked with a national firm, Greenspoon Marner, and today she's a deputy director at the Department of Real Estate, DBPR, where they handle, I think, 400,000 realtors. So compliance and all of those issues she handled. On a personal note, what I imparted to her as dad is to firstly, and let me back up, I'm so proud of her because she's a young lady and she's a woman that's looking to go to this position. She's a minority. So when she becomes a judge, there will be a lot of firsts. She will be the first woman of Indian origin in this, probably the state of Florida as a judge. I don't know if there's another one, but definitely in our region. That opens the door and cracks the glass ceilings for people to come behind her. So it's so important. Secondly, what I talked to her about was making sure that her motivation is right. Why do you want to be a judge? And make sure that you're there to serve people, help people, and be a productive member of society. So those are the things I talked to her about. She has a great role model in my wife. My wife just graduated as a nurse practitioner. This is someone that worked as a nurse, a registered nurse in the neonatal department at Florida Hospital, and then decided that, I want to try something different, and went on to school and had to go back to school and retrain and became a nurse practitioner in the mental health area. So she diverted and changed. So my daughter has a great role model in my wife, and also her brother is an appraiser. My son is an appraiser. So I'm a proud papa on Father's Day.
Wow. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And we're going to take one more quick commercial break, and literally quick, y'all, like 15 seconds, whatever you're doing.
I love your commercials. They're very, very well done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So guys, take your 15 seconds, a sip of water, but come right back because we're going to get into another very deep subject. And we definitely want to get Mr. Singh's take on moving forward in light of what happened with George Floyd. So I want to get your take on that. So we're going to be right back, guys.
At Taco John's, you can expect one thing: so good. As in quality ingredients used in tacos and burritos made just for you. Every single bite.
So good.
Expect nothing less at Taco John's.
15 seconds. Just like that, we are back. So thank you again for tuning in, guys. And Mr. Singh, definitely wanted to get your thoughts, particularly as someone who is involved in the community and kind of has your thumb on the pulse in a way. But what are your thoughts on the most constructive way to go forward in light of what has happened post George Floyd in terms of the demand for police reform, the way that communities need to be transformed if you feel there is a need for that, and the most constructive way that people can use, whether that's their guilt, their anger, their confusion, whatever that is, but constructively taking actions going forward?
So firstly, I respect law enforcement, and I have the utmost of respect for law enforcement, like many of our citizens. But for someone to kneel on someone's neck and obstruct his carotid artery and stop blood from going to his brain, I'm an EMT, so I could speak on this. Is just there's no explanation for that. But more important, Mellissa, I think for someone to create that environment where someone is allowed to do that, I think that is the bigger question. For society or that microcosm of that society in that city, for that officer to feel so comfortable enough to do that to another citizen when he's there to protect and serve is what ought to be called into question. And as the society, I think George Floyd was a microcosm of what the African American community and the minority community have felt has gone on all across the country, and they want to change and they want this to stop. And protesting was their voice. Protesting was what they had. And if we study history, no major movement has ever happened unless you have some type of protest. Gandhi said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." Dr. Martin Luther King says, "An injustice any place is a threat to justice every place." So those two are guideposts for my conscience, if you will. And I think they were, godsends in their time because their times were turbulent, and they created a tremendous amount of change. So this is the African American community and the minority community start stepping up and saying, "This is wrong. This has to stop." There's a lot of atrocities that the African American community have gone through in America. This is a fact. This is 400 years of oppression. Think about this, Mellissa. You and I get together and I say, "Hey, let's play Monopoly." But I'm not going to allow you to own any property, and I'm not going to allow you to have any money. But we're going to play. We're going to play this game. We're going to play this game for 400 years. And this is essentially what has happened to the African American community. But then you got free, and we changed the game, and we said, "Okay, we'll give you a little bit of wealth." And then 60 years later, we come back and burn your city down, burn all the assets you have, and you have to start over, right? So this is what the African American community is facing. This is what they're looking at. So when you see this pent up aggression, or you see this pent up type of behavior, it's coming from someplace. And this is someplace that we need to A, talk about, and B, understand as a community. And I think this is how we will heal.
And what are your thoughts on the best things that they can do going forward? Because you've seen a lot of new folks decide to go ahead and run for office. Some folks have gotten involved with nonprofit organizations. What do you feel are some useful and constructive steps going forward?
Yeah, my advice would be have a plan in place, because there's an old Japanese saying, "Be careful what you ask for, you very well may get it." So let's just say, you're marching you want change. And someone said, "Okay, let's have change." you need to have a plan in place to articulate and implement what that change is. So have a clear, concise plan in place to address the change that you want. I think that's so very important. Have a business plan for that change, right? Have a profit and loss for that change. What are the pros? What are the cons? All of these things need to be taken into place. And I think the successful operators that are looking for change will have that. There's always peaceful protest is so very important in any community. We talk about the word looting. The media have a way of panning a camera on young minorities sometime when they're looting. I don't think anyone in this society can condone looting. Right? Because it's really disrupting a business that you don't own. It's stealing. Let's look at that word looting for a minute, right? The word loot is a Sanskrit word. The word loot comes from India, and it came from India because of the British oppression. The British Empire looted 436 trillion with a T dollars from India in gold, in diamonds. As a matter of fact, the crescent jewel on the Queen of England's crown, the Kohinoor stone, was looted from India, right? So they have done this in India. They've done this in Africa. They've done this in South and Central America. They've done this in the Middle East. So again, when we talk about looting, where's the CNN and Fox and MSNBC camera back then? Where was the camera back then? But now we see a couple of young people stealing some Nikes or breaking a glass, and that's national news, right? So again, we need to put these things into perspective. We need to have a historical perspective on them, and we need to address them in a very civilized manner.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. There are a lot of people who would not have said that. So yeah, definitely appreciate you sharing that. There are a few other platforms.
And again, Mellissa, I say that because I want to address equity, right? I say that because it's incumbent upon me to talk about equity, talk about fairness, talk about calling it like it is. It's important. That's important as an elected official. And I think that also transcends into how I govern my office. So it's a full circle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So at this point, we're pretty much wrapping up because we're getting closer to 2 o'clock. But
oh man, I have to come back and do another hour because I really enjoy chatting with you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. But for, given the interview we did have, are there any parting shots you want to give the audience? Is there anything that you want them to know that we haven't discussed yet?
Mellissa, if we are going to talk about elections, this is a very, very important election, and who you elect to office is more so important. In the case of the property appraiser, we have accomplished so much. I have been a champion for the middle class and the little guy, in that if the big theme parks, if the big property owners are not paying their fair share, then who is paying that fair share? It comes up on the backs of the tax of the middle class and the little guy. So I am the champion for that. I'm the champion for ensuring that the big guys are treated fairly also. But fairly and equity is really what I want to talk about. And that's essentially, and that can only come about if you have someone that's experienced, that has the skill, care, and diligence, that has the track record, and is eminently qualified to make the decisions on these valuations. They're not easy decisions. I could have done like my predecessor and just stamp the blotted line and keep on going. Trust what I'm telling you, I would be reelected for umpteen years. But I chose to make the hard decisions. I chose to be fair and equitable. I had a colleague of mine said, hey, you've got opposition. All you had to do, the way you run your office, is just sign the dotted line and just keep it moving, and you would have no opposition. I said, I could not put my head on a pillow at night and know that I've done a good job. My mother just passed away in October. I could not say my mother would be looking down on me and be proud. So those are the things, those are the values that she's instilled in me, and those are the values I bring to this office. So I in closing, the question that I asked you earlier is, your mother has scrubbed floors for a living and has accumulated this money, and ask you to invest this money, and you get ready to buy a house. Of the three candidates, who would you call to give you a fair and equitable value? Who would you trust? Would you trust someone that's never appraised a home? Collectively, both of my opponents have never appraised a single home. Think about that for a moment. I've appraised $1 trillion, and my office is in the top 1% in the world. I've received the highest distinction in the appraisal practice globally. Globally, we're talking how many billions of people there are in this world. And Rick Singh, your property appraiser, have received this. I say this with humility, of course, but I want to impress upon you that this experience matters. You know, experience does matter.
All right. Thank you so much for being on our show. We welcome you to come back on the show. You know what I mean? It's not a one-time thing. So
thank you.
For sure, we will be in touch and of course to talk more, because there's a lot involved in the duties, in the day-to-day duties of the property appraiser. And this election season, we still got 2 months of it. It's only 2 months, but we still have 2 months of it.
Absolutely.
So,
and COVID has changed the dynamics of campaigning too.
Right.
COVID has really now you knock on people's door, and I actually experienced this myself. I was hungry while I had my COVID. I was hungry one day and actually did not go to the door to answer it, and it was Grubhub that was bringing me food. So if I would not answer the door, although I'm hungry for food, I'm not going to answer the door to nobody campaigning or knocking on my door. So it's changing the dynamics tremendously of our campaigning.
Right. Actually, very quickly, did you want to discuss that a little bit? Like for you and specifically your campaign, what have you seen in terms of being able to reach out to constituents? Like, how have you maneuvered that in light of the pandemic?
I'll have to tell you that the next time you have me on.
Got you. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on. We appreciate you for sure.
Thank you so much. God bless.
All right, guys. So thank you for tuning in here at Florida National News with the Politics and Power series. We typically come on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So we will be back on Tuesday with another guest. So be sure to stay tuned. And of course, you guys will see me back here in the evening for the evening news rundown at 5 p.m. So be sure to stay tuned. I will be here with your top stories basically for the day, making sure that you guys get your bite-sized digestible pieces of news, of course. And then since it is a Thursday, our beautiful and lovely Jamesia Stoudemire will be here out of Los Angeles to join us for the Entertainment 4 for 4. We know you guys love it when she joins us on the show. And another quick reminder, we still have some open spots left for small to medium-sized businesses that want to promote your businesses, particularly in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. You just heard myself and appraiser Rick Singh talk about this. So this is an opportunity that you are interested in, that this is something that you want some free promotion for. We are here. We are a small to medium business as well. So we understand the struggle. We get it. So if you're interested, be sure to email jennifer.rosario@floridanationalnews.com. Send her all your information. We're looking for 15-second to 30-second ads to be able to run on all of our shows. You guys see that we have a stable of shows that is growing. The Evening News Rundown, the FNN Sports Take with Casey Hudson that comes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. And of course, tomorrow, just a quick shout out for our lovely Jennifer Rosario tomorrow. And a quick reminder for you guys, Jenny Rosario will have Sana Kibbs, who is the lovely Nigerian host and fashion influencer. She will be on tomorrow at 1 p.m. for the Entertainment Buzz. So you guys, we have an exciting rest of the week coming up. Be sure to tune in. As of right now, thank you guys for tuning into this particular show, and I will see you this afternoon. Take care.